Today I'm going to bring you a Grim Dawn video covering a wide gamut of money-making methods, really aimed at the intermediate or beginner player, trudging his way through early ultimate or scraping by an elite difficulty. However, I do have some pro tips at the end of this one, so everyone should stick around for this. These aren't by any means the only way to make coin in this game, and they're for sure more lucrative methods, but for the sake of that level 75 player out there trying to craft an item only to find themselves short of money, this one's for you. So one of the best ways to make money in this game is simply to pick everything up off the ground and vendor it. But if you're like me and you configure your loot filter only to show usable items for your build, you might find yourself in a similar position and short on spare cash come late game, which can become a real problem later on when you realize how expensive crafting can be, or if you're simply trying to stay up with the latest fashion trends. First up, we have the Fort Icon Armory Run. This is without a doubt one of the best beginner trash loot runs in the game, and it's great because it's just a plain old campaign area. This will become available after you've unlocked Act 4. Act 4 is part of the base game, so you don't need any expansions to do this, but you should get the expansions anyway because the game is awesome. The route is very simple and quick. You just head north from the Fort Icon Rift, enter the armory, kill and loot everything. Plus you get to kill the commander at the end, and sometimes he likes to drop decent items. So I ran this 3 times in every difficulty and took an average after rendering all the items. I did run the lower difficulties on my level 100, so I was seeing the max allowable item level loot on each difficulty per zone. Figured I'd keep it consistent. Plus it'll allow my average to show best case scenario, so your mileage may vary slightly depending on your level when doing this. I am avoiding mentioning clear times because it will vary depending on build and gear. Plus on normal and elite, like I said, I was doing this with a level 100 character. It's not really fair. So as you can see here, normal I got an average of 32,000 iron bits per run. Elite was about 50,000 and ultimate was around 92,000. Not too shabby. Pretty easy to be honest. Pretty quick. Available with the base game. And of course it's just a campaign area, so no gimmicks on accessing this area except unlocking Act 4. We can do better in the campaign though. So next up we have the Tome of the Eldritch Sun. This area was suggested on a forum post actually in addition to the previous Fort Icon run, so let's give this a go. This zone does require the Forgotten Gods expansion pack however, but once again it's just the main campaign zone, so it's super easy to get to and there's no cost to enter it. Just take the rift to the Tome of the Eldritch Sun and start killing. There are 3 floors in this area including the boss room if you choose to clear it. There are also a few areas with hidden spoils here and a treasure trove. I didn't go out of my way to loot these areas though, but it's your call. So after 3 clears on each difficulty, this is what we ended up with. Normal I got an average of 68,000 iron bits. Elite I got 163,000. And on Ultimate right around 224,000 iron bits. You get an absolute mess of items here. From a money per clear standpoint, this zone wins over the Fort Icon Armory Run by a long shot. However, it takes what felt like double the time due to its size. The zone does have a few annoying healing mobs, so that can be a pain on Ultimate if your build doesn't have good area damage. Also, your bags will get filled more than once across every difficulty it seems. I think if you are still in really early game, you should stick with the Fort Icon Armory, as you might not even have all your inventory slots unlocked yet, and it's definitely going to be a bit easier. Next up we're going to take a look at one of Grim Dawn's skeleton key dungeons for iron bits farming. I picked Steps of Torment for this farming test just because it's the earliest and easiest dungeon you will encounter, plus it only requires the base game, so it's available to all. This turned out to be an utter fail on my part. My plan was to loot everything and then hit up the vendor inside the dungeon and vendor all my trash at the halfway point, seeing as how you cannot teleport out. Turns out you can't do this. These dungeon vendors will not accept your items. So for these runs I ended up sticking to rares only so my bags wouldn't fill up, and I also wanted to keep things consistent. You can obviously loot more than just rares if you have the room, but to keep things consistent I just went with rares like I said, and here's what we ended up with for iron bits. Normal was around 68,000 iron bits per run. Elite with 148,000, and Ultimate with 244,000 iron bits on average. It's not necessarily a bad place to go for bits or loot in general, but for maximizing trash drops quick and easy, sticking to the campaign areas are probably the way to go. I just wasn't feeling this method. Felt longer, more tedious, and it sucked I couldn't use the dungeon vendor to cash in halfway. Usually when I run these I like to go quick, but that's just my style I suppose. And also you need to individually loot 60 or so greens per run, but I'm going to talk about that a bit later. Now into one of my favorite methods of farming iron bits and items in general, we have the Shadow Realm, which most people can't stand apparently. I'll leave a link below to a video about how the Shadow Realm works, as well as a link to my Shattered Realm loot spreadsheet, which has a tab to help you decide which Shattered Realm tier is more effective for you based on clear times. Shadow Realm will require the Forgotten Gods expansion pack to access, and will become available after Act 1 on any difficulty. I want to take a look at early tiers on normal difficulty here though, specifically tier 15-16, which is pretty easy generally speaking to get to. You'll see an average of 110,000 iron bits per run as a level 100, after vendoring all the trash items, and that's including the 25,000 iron bits entry fee to craft a waystone. Now this isn't as good as some of the other areas, plus it obviously scales with character level in terms of the item vendor price. However, for the sake of your wrist and just better overall farming synergy, you get to pick up all the loot at the same time, all in the same area at the end, and there is a conveniently placed NPC in the same room, and you can just run over there and vendor it all away nice and easy. Plus you will get the occasional legendary, depending on level of course, a few epics here and there, blueprints, and rare crafting materials including the 100% chance for at least 1 Eldritch Essence. And on many occasions you can get multiple. If you're feeling daring and you have a pretty decent build going, grinding up to SR 6061 is actually the best iron bits farming SR tier on normal. around 250,000 iron bits per run, plus a really good chance for getting legendaries to drop. It is the best way to get loot on normal difficulty that I have found by a pretty big margin actually. I am excluding Crucible from this video, but a little bit more on that later. So that's it for the loot areas themselves that I took a look at. There are more, of course, but before we end this video, I'm going to go over some tips for actual looting first, in an attempt to save your wrist a bit of pain, and also some other interesting things about currency in the game you might not know that I learned while making this. First up, you may have noticed in some cases I am not clicking on items to pick them up. Grim Dawn has a pickup feature in the key bindings that you can bind to a convenient key. Hover around an area of loot and smash it till all the loot has been picked up. I love doing this in the Shadow Realm loot room actually, it's kind of fun. Also in the options menu on your interface there is an option to auto-loot components when you run over them. This is a newer addition to Grim Dawn that was released during the 1.1.4 patch, but is left disabled by default, so if you're a newer player I would suggest enabling this. Next is to not be like me. After level 15 or so, open up your loot filter with a little button down here, or press O by default. Uncheck magic items, and pick up all the rares as you go and vendor as you go, so you don't end up broke in the first place. Or at the very least, pick up jewelry. Here's a graphic I made taking average sell prices of a whole slew of high-level magic items in greens. The takeaway from this is that jewelry and weapons tend to be pretty good vendor trash, with belts being pretty decent as well. If you're on the fly and you're trying to clear up some bag space quick, tossing out some large chest pieces and legs is not going to hurt you at all. Also, fun fact, these items seem to be capped at a sale price of 3,500 bits. Never do that. Also, another fun fact, sell price is heavily determined by the number or types of affixes on an item. You could have two base items that are exactly the same, but the sale price will be totally different. It was rare to see two items actually have the same vendor price. Next up, you may have also noticed that rare, or green items, were auto-looting for me. This is actually a mod I only use for the purpose of making this video, but figure I'll mention it. This is the Grim Eternals mod feature. I will leave a link to this in the description below. When you install the mod, you can press Ctrl F5 in-game and check this little auto-loot rare button at the top. This made the steps of torment runs much easier for sure, because sporadically having to manually loot items here and there I could see getting a little bit tiresome. I wouldn't suggest this mod as a beginner, but hey, you do you. And for a final tip here, I bring you Garrus, the Keeper of Iron. He resides in the Conclave of the Three, so you'll need the Forgotten Gods expansion pack to access this area. This will allow you to transfer money across characters. Simply go to him with the iron bits you want to transfer. You can exchange bits for bars, put the bars in your shared stash to transfer to an alternative character, then go back to Garrus to exchange the bars back into iron bits. Kind of a long-winded process, but I feel this was the simplest method for Crate to implement such a feature in the game. So I hope I provided some newer players with insight about iron bits, money management, and a short list of places to get currency in a pinch, as well as providing some tips and tricks here and there. Your mileage may vary with these areas I mentioned today, of course, and there are many other ways to get loot and maximize trash drops in this game. Crucible is something I didn't even talk about today, simply because I've yet to explore that DLC fully. There are plenty of other campaign zones that could be tested as well. If you know of some that could be better, please comment below. I'd be happy to sticky them. Plus there is always item trading, iron duping, co-op farms, etc. The list goes on and on. The takeaway here though is that currency solely dropping on the ground in this game is not as abundant as say a game like Diablo 3, where you get showered in it purely in passing. So picking up items to trash can be very beneficial, especially when entering endgame due to respec costs, item transmuting, and crafting.